Welcome to Music Outlook LA, the weekly podcast which highlights the independent artist, whether they are a musician, vocalist, actor, actress, live audio or in-studio engineer, or a videographer, photographer. I'm your host, Will Kimsey. Each episode, we'll look at the gigs of the independent artist, from the venues we play to how we set up and break down, the gear we use and why we use it, and the info we hope you'll find useful as we all make our way in the entertainment industry. Music Outlook LA is brought to you by Kim Z Entertainment, LLC. Go to kim-zentertainment.com to find out what they're doing for the independent artist. Kim Z Entertainment, LLC. Independent entertainment done independently. My guest today is producer, engineer, videographer, Eric Bailey. I first met Eric a couple of years ago at Pasadena Media while taping the show Sounds Within, hosted by LV Smith, where he's worked as one of the show's producers. Eric is also a producer for the show Behind the Curtains, hosted by Franklin Donny D, who I'll have on a future episode. Today, Eric and I will talk about his work with Pasadena Media, his production company, E-Dogs Productions, the audio and video gear he uses, and more. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Eric Bailey. What's happening, my man? How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me on your show.
Hey, no problem, man. I'm honored and appreciate everything you did. So, yeah, let's just go back a little bit, if we can, in the Wayback Machine, as they say in the days of growing up with cartoons and everything. Mr. Peabody, please take us back. LV's show, Sounds Within, that's where we first met. I was quite impressed with the studio layout and everything, and what happens up there at Pasadena Media. So why don't you tell us about yourself, what you do up there at Pasadena Media, and all that. Floor is yours, my man.
Well, by trade, I'm a musician, audio engineer, and I do a lot of videography. And I've been working with Pasadena Media for the last 10 years. Most of that is freelance work through them. And I started producing the show Behind the Curtain roughly 5 years ago. And what we do at Pasadena Media, we actually work with a lot of local community producers, volunteers, people who want to learn the trade. Pasadena Media is probably one of the best places if you trying to learn television production on small or large scale. It's actually free. It doesn't cost you a dime. The only way to cost you some money if you want to become a producer is roughly $50 for Pasadena, Altadena, and Sierra Madre residents. Other than that, if you live in LA or some other cities, it probably costs like $70 per season. And if you or your audience really interested in trying to become a producer or just filling time just volunteering, you know, we have like classes for lighting, camera work, audio work, just journalism. You know, it's a really cool spot because anywhere else it costs you tens of thousands of dollars to learn this stuff.
Yeah, I saw that. And for those that don't know, Pasadena Media is pretty much local cable access. So all of the shows there are produced at the station in Pasadena. Great city. I've done some work down there myself, not just at the media, but my band has performed out in that city. Love the city. Everything's pretty good about it. I love it there. So the guests that come on the various shows, both LV's and for Behind the Curtain with Franklin Donny D, are those primarily indie artists? Are they just musicians? Do they hit all the genres of entertainment? What's going on with those guys?
Well, both. They're local artists most of the time, and we do have professional artists come through whenever they're in town. But we look for the untouched talent, the raw talent, you know, the struggling musicians. Those are the type of stories we would like to tell.
That sounds cool. So all you young indie artists that are trying to make it or that have been out for a minute, I'll put the information for Pasadena Media in the show notes. Be sure to check them out. Pretty good spot. I've checked out some of their other works, too. They do some pretty interesting things, from documentaries, music interviews and the like. So yeah, give it a chance. Check it out when you get the opportunity. So when some of those artists have pulled through, has it helped their careers in any way, given them any kind of further push?
Well, we had one artist. She was in a couple of groups. Matter of fact, all these groups are pretty much one big group because they tour together or whatever. We get a lot of acts from San Bernardino, and we have this one older act. When I first met them, they was called, wow, it's on the tip of my tongue. Well, anyway, they went under a few name changes, and they got recognized on my YouTube page, so they're opening up for some big artists out in New York right now. So, people that come on the show, we try to promote them the best that we can. We normally use Facebook, and we have a large YouTube follower. So, the who's who's, they check out the acts that comes on, and they find a way to book them, actually,
Yeah.
So that's what we actually do. When you come on the show, we just try to promote you. It's just free promotion for everybody.
That works.
So it's a good way to network.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody likes free.
And it's not a lot of that nowadays. You got to pay some agency or something, or get a booking agency or whatever. But it's nothing's free out there. But Pasadena Media is free, though.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, the industry has changed so much. I'm finding that there are less and less venues, unless I'm just not looking hard enough, that are actually supporting, live music out there. You just seem, at least in Southern California, that you've got to really look hard to find places. And I'm grateful for the clubs that are out there, not just in Pasadena, but throughout Southern California, that still allow us musicians to be able to put something together and present it to the public, because we do love doing what we do. I got this quote that I put on my website, and here at the show I say it all the time. Confucius said it: if you do a job you love, you never work a day in your life. And I really believe that all of us, no matter what avenue we're in this industry, love what we do. Otherwise we just wouldn't be doing it.
You're absolutely correct. And I actually love what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I don't get paid that much to do it, but, I have a real job like everybody else to pay the bill.
Right.
But if I can do what I really love to do, I would do it for free if I can have something else take care of my bills for me.
That would be great, man. I love it. So, hey, speaking of doing the job you love, so you are doing audio engineering. When I was up at Pasadena Media, I saw you messing around with the video. You're running around like the proverbial chicken with his head cut off. So you're doing both, just one? What's going on there with your work?
Well, my love is audio engineering, but when I'm producing the show, it's actually producing the show. Sometimes you can't get a lot of volunteers. Matter of fact, let me mention this. Most of the shows that's produced through Pasadena Media is a volunteer-based thing. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of volunteers that will come out, but sometimes people have things to do and they can't show up. So that particular time, and it was quite a few particular times where a couple of people didn't show up, so those spots has to be filled. And I play multiple roles. As a producer, I might jump on the camera, I might do some PA work or something, grip work, but it has to be done. So that's probably why you saw me running around.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, and speaking of running around, I guess, would you consider yourself more of a musician, a techie, or both?
Well, I was more of a musician up until I moved to Southern California 15 years ago. But once a musician is always a musician. I just don't play that much anymore. I do other things. I like keeping my options open, so I reinvent myself. And, I like, let me backtrack for a minute. The point when you said that live music is kind of faded out. And, we did have a dry spell for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking live bands are trying to come back to the clubs because some club owners want that live band instead of playing tracks all the time.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad to see the resurgence. It's just not like it was back in like the 90s or maybe even in the 80s. I guess that's my point of reference. Being a child growing up in the 70s and 80s, I know seeing live bands and being out there, it just was something that I always wanted to do. And just keeping track with friends and such, I noticed that, okay, it's kind of on a decline, but more places, I think, need to be made available for us musicians, whether we're indie, professional, no matter what level we're on, just to get our stuff out there, to entertain the masses, and just do what we love, man. That's pretty much where I'm coming from with that. So with all the jumping around that you do, I saw some of the cameras, and folks, these are not your typical camcorders. These are high production cameras used for television production. What are some of the cameras that are used?
Well, at the studio, we have 3 cameras that's stationary, where we can actually get multiple shots. We use one camera, which is the center camera. We use that for a wide shot, and the ones on each side are close-ups and mid-shots. But the actual cameras that we have are Panasonic's, kind of industry standard. They're high definition, have long lenses, and they're attached to the control room. And in the control room is basically where they do all the mixing of cameras, audios, and probably videos that we need to insert or anything else that we need to run to make the production function properly.
Mm-hmm. So with all of that kind of gear going on, I know I'm pretty much coming from an audio standpoint. What's the video version of an audio direct box? I used to call it a through box, which basically, folks, is like the box that's on the floor that allows you to plug in all your XLR, your microphone cables, and it goes directly to the mixing board no matter where it is, whether it's in another room or the back end of the club or something.
Well, we have the same setup. With every show, we have an analog snake, 16-channel for all the audio to go through, and it passed through a patch bay, which is on the wall in the studio. That's ran from the studio to the control room, kind of like your regular recording studio might have.
Right.
But with the cameras, we run that the same way. So if we run 3 wires, which has audio, video, and HDMI and all the other crap attached to it, run through a patch bay on the wall to the studio. The control room. Then inside the control room for the audio, you have a 24-channel board, which take care of all of that mixing for the audio. Then we have another mixer, which is called a TriCaster for the video. So the audio from the analog mixer pass through the TriCaster and get remixed or condensed down for television level. Then it's being mixed in with the video in real time.
Okay.
So all of this is going on in the background where the TriCaster stores the video and audio, and then you got another recording unit that would record everything to an SD card for the client.
Okay.
So with this TriCaster, it's kind of like a 72-channel mixer, but it doesn't look like it. It has a lot of ins and outs to it, so you can pretty much run any audio, video, or anything else you can think. And actually takes text, graphics, and a lot of other stuff. So you're looking at a bunch of layers that's going on in the background in real time.
Right. So is the TriCaster kind of like basically a video capture device?
Yes. it is.
Okay. And I mentioned that because I called Eric a couple of years ago. Like I said, I met him a couple of years ago, and about a year or so ago. I forget the time. I'm bad with dates. If I don't have it written down, I'm like, eh. But anyway, I called Eric. Excuse me. I called Eric to get his input on video capture boxes and everything. I do the work I do for the church. We broadcast all of the services over the internet, and when I was approached about doing it, I was like, yeah, I'm sure I could figure it out. And you were one of the first persons that I called, and I just wanted to publicly thank you for giving me the heads up on how to run that. It's running smoothly now. We use a much smaller, way smaller version of a capture box that you described. It's by Blackmagic Ultra Studio Mini Recorder. It's just a single HDMI in running into laptop Apple through a Thunderbolt cable. So thank you again, Eric, for giving me that info.
Welcome.
It really, really helped. We're going to be expanding a little bit, so I'll give you a heads up on what kind of things we're going to be doing there. Hey, while I was getting things together today, I went over to your SoundCloud page, to the E-Dogs production stuff. Man, that's some nice jams you got going on there. You know, I mean, once you said you were a musician, I literally did not know. So let's get to the E-Dogs, and before I do that, what do you play?
I started out playing music at an early age, and I was trying to fit in with a lot of different bands.
Right.
And I played bass and little keyboards and percussions or whatever. And I was always that relief guy. You know, somebody get kicked out of the group, they'll bring me in. And as soon as they get somebody that's better, tell me to get to the side, and I just jump on another instrument, kind of like Prince,
Right.
So that's how I learned how to play a lot of instruments. Then when I started recording myself at home, I figured out, well, I can layer all this stuff. I don't really need to be with anybody,
There you go.
So that's how I started really writing songs. And sometimes, I have a friend come in, he might play keyboards or whatever, and I just jam on top of it. So I have 41 songs that's published, and copyright written and everything through ASCAP.
Yeah, I too am a fellow ASCAP member. I bow graciously. Yeah. So
publisher and owner.
There you go, folks. I've stressed this before in the shows. Legally protect your work. Get those copyrights. Sign up with ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, one of the music companies that take care of that for royalties and everything else. Just get yourself protected, people. That's pretty much where we're at with that. So when you're doing work for E-Dogs, I saw that you're pretty much like a full service studio there. How does that work?
I was a studio up until about 5 years ago. I'm leaning more toward television production, so I've been getting rid of a lot of stuff, donating stuff, and, trying to buy up much video equipment that I can, because I like shooting out on locations and stuff.
Right.
And that stuff costs money, so...
It does, yeah.
Need the equipment. And a lot of my stuff, some of it was outdated, and I got tired of updating software every 6 months to a year. And I might see something that I really want and don't need, but I buy it anyway. It takes a lot to have a recording studio.
Yeah.
Then you got the friends that come by. Well, I need a favor. You can produce my song, but I don't have any money. Okay. Then, I wound up being a producer like 1,000 times, but I didn't make any money off of it. But, it's just the heart,
Exactly. So when you're in producing on the music end, what kind of setup do you have? I mean, mixing board, do you go directly USB into the computer?
First I was doing outboard gear. I had an older Tascam DM24 digital version that I was using. It was basically a controller, but I was doing a lot of mixing in the on the computer through. I started out with Cakewalk, then I brought Cubase, and I've been a big fan of them and Reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been bouncing back and forth between them. I was doing a lot of MIDI stuff, then I started doing audio stuff, started doing voiceovers for people, commercials. I had this one play that I was doing for probably a year, but they kept switching locations. So I used to have my wife do the voiceover for the locations, the date and time. Mm-hmm. I kept the other structure intact. Okay. So those used to get played on KJLH. I had a 30-second version and a 1-minute version.
All right. One of my previous guests and a friend of mine, Renee Collins, she worked with KJLH and with Stevie in, what was that, 89, 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Her episode is up. It's episode 3. She sings. She's out in Washington, D.C. right now. She's going to be coming back, she says. But, you know, just kind of wanted to throw that out there. Maybe you might have seen her. Don't know, but just wanted to throw that out there because it's funny how coincidences work.
Cool. I will look for her. I don't recall her, but
right.
I'll find her.
There you go.
L.A. is a small place, you know.
Despite its size, it is kind of small. I'd be surprised who you run into out here. So with your audio and your video work, you mentioned that the Panasonic was pretty much an industry standard. So would you say that mixing board, the Tascam, that you had, is that one of your favorite pieces? Why did you choose that?
That's one of my favorite old pieces. I like Mackie. I tried to get into Allen and Heath and other boards, but I wanted to downsize because I did a lot of shows on location, just doing audio work, might be mic in a band or something. So I went out and bought a Line 6 Stagescape digital mixer. Has 16 inputs, you know, combo jacks, and you just go set up a band and it automatically does the sound checks and all of that stuff, and it add compression to each channel. Once you plug something in, it just assume that you're plugging in an XLR cable, which would be a microphone. And if it is a microphone, it asks you female or male.
Right.
And if you say female, it'll load up everything that you normally load up for a female, reverb and other stuff. And if you plug another cable in and say it's a guitar, and say, okay, guitar, now it's going to load up all those effects. And what I really like about this board is the band can do a quick sound check and go off to lunch or something, and bam, you recheck and everything. And once they come back, all their levels are checked. And it constantly rechecked while they playing.
Right.
So if they play too high, you know, it'll bring them down a little bit, but you won't notice it.
Okay. So that must come in handy if, for example, you have a situation where you record or do live audio for Group A, get them off the stage or get them out of the studio, and then in comes Group B. Does that equipment allow you to set them up presets? Say you have a opportunity to get both of them locked into the thing. You could just press a button and boom, the sliders and levers and things will go right to band number 2, for example.
Yes, they normally call those a scene. You know, you like if you play at a different clubs and different clubs sound different, you can save that club as a scene. And when you go back to that club, you just bring the name up and bam, you already checked and sound checked and all that other stuff. You can do the same thing with bands, you know, like it has actual pictures of band members playing guitars and keyboards and stuff. So if you go from an 8-piece band to a trio, you know, it's going to mute all those other mics and just bring up the trio group, wherever they play.
Isn't technology wonderful?
Yeah, it really comes in handy, and it's you operate it from iPad, You can go to a vocalist monitor, and while she's singing, you just doing the levels for her right there on the spot using your iPad.
Oh, that is cool.
Or iPhone.
All right.
Mackies have the same setup right now with their boards.
Cool, because I'm still kind of crossing between analog and digital. I'm a Behringer guy. I just love their products. When I do live audio, I've got a couple of nice 1,000-watt speakers, just a simple 8-channel analog, but it's got a USB out, and I will do the old school live to 2-track recording, USB right into the laptop. Also do video. Like I said, I have the small camcorder, little Canon Vixia, capture it through there, and I use some free software, OBS, capture it, and if I or the band want to go live, I can just send it directly from OBS right out to the internet. So that's pretty much a good thing there. Like I said, I just love the tech. So basically your work takes you with mainly independent artists, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And you mentioned the Behringer. I've been a Behringer fan for years. Matter of fact, I just got rid of a analog board. It was a 24-channel Eurodisc.
Those are great.
I mean, it's rugged, And I have two 15-inch Behringer speakers, and I gave away some Behringer outboard gear, like a 32 equalizer and feedback detection, and I really like that headphone amp, though, that I had, because I used to use that inside the studio a lot. It's a 4-channel.
Right.
That was really nice by Behringer. And Behringer makes digital boards now.
Yeah,
like that X32. Then they had a smaller version, the Air 16, which you can operate that from an iPad. And those is only like $400, I think, or $500.
Yeah, you can get some pretty good gear from Behringer for a nice, reasonable price. That's one of the things that they advertise about their product, high-quality gear at a reasonable price. I'm using the Xenix X1222 as my mixing board. And for my interface, I'm using the Euphoria UMC 404 HD. It's a 4-channel interface. They have 2, 4, and 8-channel interfaces, and I'm using the 4-channel one to get this thing going here today. So cool. I'm really digging on all of this. So I mentioned that SoundCloud was one of the places that we could hear some of the stuff you've done. Like I said, you got some nice beats going on there on that. I'm really digging what you're doing there. But any other places where people can hear what you're doing and hear how slamming I think you are?
Well, with the samples that you heard, matter of fact, probably about 30 to 40 shows actually use my music in their talk shows.
Okay.
As the intro or the outros. I actually donated a bunch of music to Pasadena Media. It's in their library, and any producer would like to use it, all they have to do is give me credit on the back end of the show.
Okay. Well, folks, if you want to check that stuff out, if I'm not mistaken, I'm doing it off the top of my head because my desktop computer just went to sleep. That should be pasadenamedia.org, O-R-G. Is that the right website address?
Correct.
Cool.
And you can stream a lot of the shows there, and, it's all live.
Right. They also have a YouTube channel. Make sure you go check that out. I guess just look up Pasadena Media in the search engine. You'll find a lot of the stuff there. And if you're interested, you'll be able to check me out on Behind the Curtain and Sounds Within, also on YouTube, and it should still be stored up in the PasadenaMedia.org website. So check all that stuff out. It's some good high-quality stuff, local cable access. So if you don't live in the Pasadena area, those are the other ways at which you can check that material out. So we talked about your gigs, we talked about the gear. Let's get to the info. For the indie artists, whether they're starting out, been around for a while, or anything, what kind of advice could you give to those people who trying to get higher up on the food chain, maintain themselves, whatever?
Well, my advice to anybody is never give up. Always network. That's the key to trying to get up the food chain. And just stay hungry, You just got to do it. Don't listen to anybody negative. Try to surround yourself by positive people like Will, myself, and just do the right thing.
Cool. Hey, we were talking about protecting the work with performance rights organizations, the PROs like ASCAP and BMI and CSAC, and you and I are both ASCAP members. You mentioned on not only on the performance end, but also on the writing or production end, the publishing end. I was checking out some of the things that Congress is actually doing. I've only mentioned this on another show, but they've got this thing called the Music Modernization Act that got signed into law recently, and it's supposed to help the musician or other artist with content, give them more money for their streams on the internet. You ever had experience with any of that stuff, and what do you think about seeing the rate go up? I mean, it's a very low rate in the first place, and I honestly have not had the opportunity yet to see how much it has raised or seen any kind of chart or anything like that. But what do you think about something like that?
I think it'd be great. This is the first time I'm hearing of something like this, but my thing is, how would they actually monitor it,
Right.
How would they distribute, whatever royalties is due to somebody?
Mm-hmm.
All of that got to come into play some type of way. I don't know. It's probably just something that we're going to have to wait it out and see what happens. But it sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. Former guest of mine, Dave Pinchot, he felt pretty much the same way, and so do I. I mean, there's a lot of ins and outs to it. You perform the material, you protect it legally, then you put it out there, for example, on social media, which is what this act is for. And then from there, it gets played, people download it, they stream it, whatever, and the various hosting sites are supposed to report the plays to ASCAP or BMI or CSAC, and they in turn are supposed to keep track of all this. They have tracking software and this kind of thing and what have you. So, as Eric was saying, there are a lot of different parts to it, and I'll probably do a show dedicated just to the legal end of that. I've got a couple of guests that are interested in discussing that issue. So in further episodes, guys, stay tuned and we'll get into the nuts and bolts of that kind of thing. But, a good start is any. That's what my guest Dave had mentioned. I mean, it's a start. You got to get the ball moving. You got to do something because we're out here doing what we love and everything else. And on the law tip, did you hear that our illustrious governor is trying to have us indie musicians be considered employees?
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I forgot the assembly bill, but basically it's like what they did with the Uber drivers. You remember that controversy, whether they're independent or they're employees? Well, there are certain aspects of the entertainment industry which will be affected. I'll send you the links and everything that I'm talking about, where I got all this stuff from. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what he's trying to do. I mean, yeah, it may seem like a good idea, but at the same time, I'm still not so sure. So that's about all the comment I'm going to give on that, because I have to go in and read it. But I'm like, I really don't know about this kind of thing, But anyway, So I'm going to get to these last two. And Eric, again, thank you so much for being a part of this wealth of information here that you provided. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, is there contact information you were able to provide for us?
Sure. I can be contacted by email. It's edogmusicstudio @gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a Facebook page. It's Behind the Curtains. And I have Instagram I just started up. Same info, Behind the Curtains. Buzz Behind the Curtain Show on Instagram.
Okay.
And, I'm just out there in Pasadena. If your listeners are in the area, everybody knows me. But I normally hang out down at the studio, making TV shows. So that's where I spend most of my free time.
All right. I'll be putting all of that information in the show notes, ladies and gentlemen. So if you didn't catch that, please make sure you check out the show notes for that. And Eric, I'm going to get to this last question, and I ask all of my guests this one particular question. What's in your car?
In my car?
What do you listen to when you're stuck in good old L.A. traffic?
Well, I got to listen to music by Eric Bailey and Will Kinsey. Those only two CDs I own.
I like that answer. Man. There you go. Hey, so what are your musical influences, though? Seriously, what do you know?
Oh, come on, man. Earth, Wind, and Fire, Marvin Gaye, everybody's from Motown, Philly. And I just like old music, period, man. I try to get into new music. Matter of fact, I was telling my buddy, I said, man, what's wrong about this new music? It all sounds the same. There's no separation. You get the old music. When you hear that first three bars, you know what music it is, when it came out. Do I need to run to the dance floor?
There you go. Because I was talking with my wife. I mentioned this in the last show. We were pulling up the Video Music Award photos. Either it was from last year or something like that. And we're just thumbing through the pictures, seeing who's who. And I did not recognize anybody except Aerosmith.
Yeah. Same here. I don't even watch music shows anymore. It's like, my wife watch it, and I'm like, I don't recognize anybody. I don't even listen to their music. Sometimes they might do a tribute to somebody, and I might watch it, Other than that, man, it's like, it sucks.
There you go. So my advice to you indie artists that are coming up, go back and listen to the old school. Listen to the people, no matter what the genre is, that made things happen. Be different. Do something. I mean, don't be afraid to experiment. Live music is making a big comeback. Yeah, it had a decline, but it's coming back. Do what you can. Get in the studio. Get those lessons. Make it happen. Do it right. I mean, shed those chops. Do what you got to do. You know what I'm saying? Just make it happen, man. I mean, there is a wealth of music out there, all sorts of genres, R&B, hip hop, jazz, gospel, you name it, rock, heavy. I mean, it doesn't matter. I listen to just about every type of music, and I know good music. And like you said, Eric, when you hear those first 3-4 bars, you know what's up. You know whether the band is tight, the song is tight, and everything else. And it doesn't sound like it did back in the 80s. Remember when you would go into the department store and they had the keyboard department up and everybody would jump on the Casio? I remember those days when everything sounded like it was done with a Casio. And yeah, I had a Casio. I think a lot of keyboard players had a Casio, even though it had the
I had one.
Yeah.
I brought one before my professional keyboard,
Yeah, I have one that I take with me to my rehearsals when I need a real quick board to go over parts with people. There's nothing wrong with the Casio product. It was just that drum machine sound, everybody used it, and then it seemed like it advanced into more serious loops, if you will, and everything. And there's nothing wrong with the loops. Like I said, I'm a techie. I love the tech. But you got to combine it with good arrangement, good songwriting, and everything else. And you got to be able to blend it all together to get that nice, big, fat, juicy sound, no matter what the genre is,
I was going to suggest that to your indie artists. All I hear is loops. Like you say, it's nothing wrong with that, but put changes in there somewhere. Separate your song from all other, artists. You want the breaks, the changes, and clean it up and put, reverb or something on this instrument, or, make it fat sound. Your drums, just don't settle for drum machines. Once you separate the cymbals, the toms, and fatten up the kick or whatever, that's how you make good music.
Exactly.
I'm a big fan of horns. I love horns. I wish they'd come back, but nobody uses horns anymore.
I do, as he raises his hand in the background, which nobody can see. I use horns. I do everything on keyboard, but I do have a band, and I love the live instruments, so I've got a plethora of friends I could call and ask them, hey, here's the song. I email it to them. Do what you can. Email me back the track, and I got a nice live bass line going instead of me thumbing it out on keyboard or real sax, that kind of thing. But yeah, the arrangements have to be tight. And folks, do something different other than go 1 3 6 2 5 back to 1. Oh, well, I think I'll go from the tonic chord to 1. I think I'll jump up to the 3. Okay, we heard that. Step outside the comfort zone. There's nothing wrong. Experiment. But, just remember, most listeners can't take it too far out. But, music is there to feed the soul. It's there to enhance. It's there to entertain. We're there to just do all of that. It brings emotion out of you. You can't be emotional with just 3 chords. Well, maybe you can, but, it just variety, a little variety. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank again Eric Bailey for this interview, everything that he's done. Check out what he's doing. I'll put all that information in the show notes. Want to say anything in closing, man?
Yes, once again, those who starting out, please don't give up. Surround yourself by positive people. Try to go out to different venues and see what everybody else is doing. That's how you actually learn. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there that'll help you arrange your songs or show you how to start a recording studio. Or if you want to get in television like me, there's all kind of tutorials on anything you want to do. Like me and Will, we grew up with encyclopedias, we didn't have YouTube. So
there you go.
It's different now. The record companies kind of faded out. So now there's a lot of independent artists that are doing everything. You're promoting yourself on social media. You're distributing your music out there. It's much easier to get recognized now than it did before.
Exactly. You're wearing multiple hats. You're, like he just said, you're writing the music. You're distributing it yourself. You got to legally protect it. You got to see who your target audience is. All the things that the record labels did, and many of them that still exist, still do, we as independent artists have to do ourselves. We're shooting our own videos, taking our own headshots, or getting a friend to do it, whatever. Check out the YouTube how-to videos. A lot of them are very informative. I know I use them all the time when I'm stuck and I'm like, okay, how do I get from point A to point B? There's a video for that. And like you said, we had encyclopedias, we had card catalogs, we actually had to hoof it down to a public library for any piece of information,
And don't forget the roadmap in the trunk.
There you go. The good old Thomas Guide, man. Go in the back of the Thomas Guide, look up the page number. It'll tell you page and grid. Then you flip to that page and then flip to that, and you had to handwrite down your directions so that you wouldn't be flipping around while you're trying to drive. Now nowadays you've got good old hands-free driving, and you've got apps for that. So, just just keep it positive. Do what you got to do. Learn your craft and enjoy it. Have fun doing it. You never work a day in your life if you're doing something that you love. So that's going to do it for Music Outlook LA, gigs, gear, and info. Thanks again to my guest, Eric Bailey, and be sure to check out the show notes for his contact information. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast here at Spreaker.com. That's Spreaker.com. Music Outlook LA is also available on Apple Podcasts, the Old School iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, CastBox, the TuneIn Radio app, and Listen Notes, the podcast search engine. I'm Will Kimsey, a.k.a. WK Music. Peace. This podcast is both brought to you and produced by Kim Z Entertainment, LLC. Music Outlook LA is a copyrighted broadcast of Kim Z Entertainment, LLC. The views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Will Kimsey or Kim Z Entertainment, LLC. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or any other use of this product without the express written consent of Kim Z Entertainment, LLC is strictly prohibited.